Welcome to The Human Element, presented by Whisk. I'm your host, Barb Biden, and in each episode, I sit down with CHROs and senior HR leaders to explore how AI, innovation, and human insight are reshaping the future of HR. We'll explore how technology is reshaping leadership, strategy, and the role of HR by sharing candid stories, practical ideas, and strategic perspectives to help you shape the future. The Human Element is brought to you by Whisk, the leader in agentic HR and creator of Harper, the world's first AI HR generalist. Learn how Harper can resolve up to 80% of routine HR tasks autonomously. Learn more about Whisk at whisk.com. My guest today is Ani Nazarian. Ani is the Chief People Officer at the Siegel Group and Amazing Brands. Their food and beverage portfolio is currently undergoing a national expansion. Ani is a true operator at heart. She built her foundation in luxury hospitality, helping open two of the most iconic resort destinations in Las Vegas, at the Cosmopolitan and Fontainebleau. And at that scale, you're not just hiring, you're standing up entire people systems, often across 5,000 to 7,000 team members all at once across recruiting, onboarding, and internal communications. So this is where Ani's early work in AI and systems began, in very live, high-stakes environments, and across every role since. She has also owned guest experience and used AI to deliver more personalized, high-quality service at scale. So when Ani talks about where AI belongs in HR and where it doesn't, she is not theorizing. So I am super excited to talk to her today because she's actually built some of these things. So today we're going to get into the real use cases, the limits, and how to protect the human moments that still need to be there to actually drive performance. So I am so excited to talk to you today, Ani. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for the great introduction. Such a pleasure to be on the show.
Let's start at the beginning, right? I think our viewers like to get to know who it is that we're talking to. Tell me a little bit about your background and your path to becoming a CPO.
Yes, of course. Thank you. That's a great question. Is one of my favorite stories to share. I went to school in Armenia. I am from a very small country. And when I was 19, I packed a suitcase and followed a dream to US to continue my education. I'm a very classic immigrant story of success and someone who really wanted to make a difference in a big way. Came to Las Vegas and really fell in love with the industry, did a 3-year degree because I was an international student, and went back, graduated. And I think I believe in timing because came back to Las Vegas in 2010, which was, I think, a really important time for our city, bouncing back from recession. Cosmopolitan was about to open up, and that's what kickstarted my career. So I got my first job out of college as front desk agent at Cosmopolitan. So I've spent really good 4 or 5 years of my career in hotel operations, really doing a lot of front of house roles as well as back of house roles. I think that's always my recommendation to up and coming students or young professionals who want to get into hospitality, to really put themselves in front of the guest and just start with front desk, because it's such a hub of connections, intersections of people and experiences. And that really allowed me to learn a lot about the guest experience. And then I think my next promotion always came from a leader saying, I think you'll be good at this. And that's why I'm a big believer in mentorships and the power of someone really seeing potential in you. So after front desk, I had a pleasure of working in housekeeping. I had a pleasure of opening the call center for the Cosmopolitan. So really 5, 6 great years in operations. And I had a great operational leader who said, I think you'll really succeed and do well in HR. So that's how I got into HR and been in the learning, communication, and people space for the last 10 plus years. And it's just been an incredible journey since then.
That's amazing. I love the advice. I give this often as well, as you have to work in the business before you can work on the business. And so understanding what leaders are going through. And so you really came up that path, right, to really understand how things are done in the business that you work in. So let's hop into AI a little bit. Surprise, right? So as a CPO, when you think about AI, where do you draw the line on AI with respect to HR, and what causes you to draw it there?
Sure. I think my philosophy is AI cannot replace you. You cannot hide behind AI. I think AI is there to help you. So use AI as your assistant. You use AI for automation, use AI for efficiency, looking up data and polishing up and really standardizing things. In our world, we use a lot of AI for give me a job description in a consistent templated manner. But I think that the line is it cannot replace people when it comes to human experience. And I think people connections, I'm a firm believer. I think having this concept of hospitality at heart, right? I think nothing can replace a warm smile. Nothing can replace an eye contact and a handshake. And really, this entire notion of hospitality is built around how you make people feel. So when it comes to people's livelihoods and careers, and I think judgment or culture, I think that's all human.
Completely. I'm curious in the hospitality space whether there was ever a moment that made it clear to you, that line clear to you, where that you are still servicing and providing hospitality to humans who want to be made to feel a certain way.
Yes, absolutely. So we've used a lot of automation in our onboarding systems. And currently, where we work, there's a lot of diversity at work, a lot of different generations, a lot of nuance. We're multi-stated, in multiple states. And we have a lot of language barriers. We employ front of house employees, back of house employees. So they get these beautifully drafted emails and notifications from our system saying, here's what you have to do. Here's a little video to watch and an attachment to open. And then we see these barriers of someone is 90% done with their onboarding. However, they're not finishing it. So one of the things we've talked about is that our onboarding specialists or coordinators have to make that personalized phone call and talk to the candidate. There's nothing that can replace that warm, fuzzy, hello, welcome. I'm so excited you chose us. Allow me to walk you through this. And we've seen incredible amount of efficiency in, yes, the process can be automated. Yes, AI can help us. However, it really, I think the bookends of the interaction, I think in hospitality are really important. It takes only 7 seconds to make a great first impression. And I think it's the same notion when we use AI, right? So we've automated everything to the point of, okay, you're solid. However, I'm going to get a personalized call from our onboarding specialist, and they're going to really help me put a bow and welcome me and make it really personalized. So I think that's where we cross or we draw the line of there has to be a human interaction, perhaps in the beginning of an onboarding experience and at the end.
Yeah, I think it's knowing what those moments are, right? Where that really matters. And if you're doing all the great automation work, you have the space to pick up the phone the old way and actually have a human connection with a new team member. That makes complete sense. I know you also do work in communications. You talked a little bit about some of the nuances there with different generations and different languages spoken in the workforce. I'm curious about something different. Where have you seen AI in communications work? And where have you seen places where maybe it's not working?
Excellent. I have really great two examples. I think Cosmopolitan has been a highlight of my career because I think it was such a bold brand and they've done some really great things that were first time done in the industry. With Cosmopolitan, we've implemented Rose, and she was the AI chatbot that was created to service the customers. However, the team has done an incredible job to personalize AI. And she's alive. She's live now. And if you text Rose, she really brings to life all of the brand elements that Cosmopolitan was about: curiosity, playfulness, sense of humor. She really pushes the envelope a little bit. So she is really a functional tool to get you towels, to get you checked in and out on time. However, she is a persona of the brand. And I think that was a really brilliant innovation, I think, early on in the industry. And we won multiple awards for that, of using AI to really automate, bring efficiency, again, be relevant. However, do it in a manner that is protecting your brand's identity. I think that was really done brilliantly. I've also seen with Fontainebleau, we were the first employer where we used AI for recruiting because we had to do mass recruiting, 7,000 employees, this mega incredible resort. And same thing. So Morris Lapidus was our original architect who designed the Fontainebleau Miami. And Morris was our AI chatbot who helped candidates go through the application process But Morris was a persona that came to life at orientation. We end up animating Morris. Morris had a voice, and we knew he was an Ivy League grad. He was a foodie. He was a world traveler. So really Morris became we called him an experience or employee kind of journey architect to make sure that the employee journey or the candidate journey, in fact, is really smooth, right? So he led them through application, assessments, interviewing, and then we brought Morris into our intranet world, right? So when employees logged on to intranet, they could interact with Morris. So it was, again, cleverly done. And I think that's where I've seen a lot of success is you have to personalize AI. You have to use AI to your advantage, but it cannot take your voice away. It cannot take your personality and identity away. And I think that's where a lot of individuals or brands go wrong, where they go into to the other side too much or too far.
And I have to admit, I have met Rose. I haven't met Morris, but I remember how, like, it was quite a long time ago when I first interacted with Rose, and she was really good. And all of those things that you say, actually, if I think back, probably the first time that I remember interacting with a bot that felt like it had a personality, and it did feel true to the Cosmopolitan brand as I know it. So what about harder messages, Ani? Hard messages for things like layoffs or tough feedback, changes, that kind of thing. How do you think about the role that AI can play there?
Absolutely. I always say you can use AI to put together, write up a documentation, but you're the one delivering it. So I think, again, AI cannot replace human empathy and the connection, and the conversation needs to be owned by a leader, right? So, of course, AI is great to say fact check, make sure grammar is correct, make sure the tone is intact. However, the message, I think, again, anything I think about in three buckets: if it impacts someone's career and livelihood, if it impacts culture, and if it requires judgment, right? I think human judgment comes from a place of empathy, experience. And that's when, absolutely, I think layoffs, mass communications, we need to put resource guides together. We need to tell people where are the city's job fairs happening, right? Again, AI can collect the data for us, can put in a template, but the delivery of that, I think, has to come from a human.
Completely. And it's like the first pass, right? I think how quickly AI can get you to your first draft of things is a no-brainer, right? It's like night and day difference compared to what it was pre-AI, but then putting the human touch on that as well. Because you've given so much thought to communication and you're also a leader, how would you suggest a leader use AI for their own sort of personal communication as a leader without taking the step of actually outsourcing their own human voice?
Absolutely. I think my tip is I always type what I want to say, because I think I communicate certain way. And I think sometimes it's very off-putting for me because I'm such a great communicator and I believe in authenticity. I think it's one of my core values. I say certain things certain way. And if my email is so verbose, and I think I want to use that word intentionally, it's so long. And I speak 34 languages. I'm not from here, right? I am a proud American citizen, but I'm Armenian. So I have an accent. So is that authentic? I wouldn't say that word. That's not how Ani speaks, right? It has to be Ani speak. It has to be how you communicate, how you show up. And if that communication isn't authentic and it doesn't really portray you, you don't speak that way. So for me, I draft what I want to say in bullet points and I put in AI and say, standardize it. Here's a memo template, copy paste. I want to take away personal sentiments and things of that. But I think really knowing how to give those props and, again, keep your voice and your messaging intact, and perhaps use AI to polish it. Whereas I think a lot of people go to AI and say, draft me a message conveying ABC. And I think that's in reverse, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's what you get when you ask that question. You get a message. You don't get your message, right? That's the thing. Totally. So I know we talked about onboarding a little bit. Maybe I'm thinking of things like feedback, coaching, some of the moments where AI continues to promise efficiency, but connection drives performance. I know I'm a coach, so I think there's a place for AI-based coaching and human coaching. So those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about here. How do you decide in some of those more interactive moments with a leader and a team member what can be automated and what to protect in those scenarios?
Sure. I think going back to the original point of we've just launched a few feedback models around appreciative coaching and constructive coaching. I think, and we've done workshops around what does that mean, how coaching should be delivered, what's the environment, what's your presence, what's your tone, is the employee ready? And we've used AI to really create beautifully designed templates and with examples and just really polish it up, right? Put it together where it's almost could be printed, laminated, and distributed. But I think where we saw the most success is getting on the call and going and debriefing and talking about those situations, because in our world, there's a lot of gray. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, hospitality is not a black and white industry. And I think, again, using AI to come up with the materials, with the structure, with the templates, with the paperwork. However, thinking really being intentional about the delivery, we have a lot of conversations also at work about emails, right? We talked about, hey, we can always do an email. However, it has to be followed up by a quick FAQ session or some type of live debrief where people can come in and ask questions. So now once a month, we're thinking about, we launch a policy of the month, for example, but we want to do open office hours through Zoom or Teams to allow people to come in into this open, safe space and ask questions about the policy, whether it's feedback models or conversations or coaching. I am a little bit old school when it comes to how feedback needs to be delivered. I think it should be delivered in person, especially again when the message is sensitive or again it impacts someone's livelihood.
Could not agree more with that statement. Where have you seen automation or AI in your work actually free up some of your leaders to spend more time in those human moments than they may have pre-AI?
That's a great question. We have this operational call every Friday with most of our general managers, food and beverage managers. And one of our director of ops, I think, does an incredible job using AI. Claude, we've just been like, Claude is incredible.
Yes.
Pump all this data, put all the slides together on sales, labor, merch sales, and just tell me what I need to present. Here's my template. And it just does such a beautiful job. And I think that allowed a lot of leaders to be able to spend more time in the field, have more one-on-ones, have more dynamic conversations around growth and development, but just really even in turnover reporting. We do a ton of turnover reporting and we would sit and analyze the data. What does it look like? What are the recommendations? Week, actually, my director of HR used Claude and she's, my goodness, I am hooked. Why have I not exploring this tool before? And then, of course, we still had a follow-up meeting to talk about what does that mean? How are we going to bring this to life? But just that's where I think it frees up a lot of time is that manual data analysis piece, templating even, and then just the recommendations. We had to take the recommendations and bring it home and make it our own. But I think it's just a tremendous amount of time that it allows leaders to save.
Completely. And you had said something earlier in the conversation to the effect of the risk isn't using AI, it's overusing it and losing the human moments that drive performance, when that's been abundantly clear through this discussion. What does overuse look like then in practice?
I came up with this term, a keyboard warrior. I don't know if you've heard that before.
Yep.
I think some people are really brave and bold behind a keyboard. And I think overuse to me is hiding behind AI. I think if it's not a message I would deliver in person, if it's not a statement or comment I would tell someone, I wouldn't write it and I wouldn't email it. And I think AI, it's safe to be behind the computer, behind AI, and really draft these big, bold messages. But just really, I think in leadership, being present is so important. And I think AI has a weird way of, I don't know, it almost takes away from being present. It does the critical thinking for you. I think the most effective leaders are the ones who have ability to critically think. And I think sometimes overuse is if you have AI draft all your policies, AI almost run your business, it takes away from the experience. And I think, in a meeting recently where I looked around and there was probably over 100 years of experience, if not more, in this room of incredibly smart operators and leaders from IT, HR, legal. And I was thinking about, oh my goodness, how much incredible experience, lived experience is in this room. And the stories and the things these incredible leaders have done has so much value. And if we ask AI, tell me how to do this, I think we're going to get a very generic implementation model of whatever. And that's great, right? Because it's taking the web and it's doing this search for you and saying, here's some best practices. But I think, again, best judgment, critical thinking, and taking leaders' experience and expertise into that's where you have to be careful not to overuse AI and really discredit all the real lived experience of your leadership team, or your organization.
Yeah, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And if you would normally communicate something in a page, there's no reason to suddenly have that thing become like a 20-page masterpiece of generic information just because you can get Claude or whichever tool you're using to spit that out. And I think that for me is some of, when it's gone too far. And that's what I think you're saying too, when there's no substitute for you taking your expertise and applying that as a lens over what it is that you're getting back, or feeding your expertise in first and then applying it again after, that kind of thing. But if you're outsourcing the whole thing, yeah, what do we have all these people with 100+ years of collective experience in a room for, really? And we do need those people in the room.
Mhm.
So what would you say to a fellow CPO who may be going a little too far or is about to over-rotate with using AI, maybe in an overuse sort of sense?
I think personally, to me, I feel that it's a discredit to my leadership, to my voice, and to what I bring to the table. And I think people really crave connections and people want to be seen, heard. And I think probably going back to one of the initiatives we've done at the Cosmopolitan, we called it Hear More Sessions, where we would get people from all walks of life into the room: valet attendant, housekeeper, executive, cook, chef, and we would say, what's on your mind? What are you thinking about? And we've done some incredible organically led campaigns and employee initiatives, great innovations around operations, and all these great ideas came from people. And I think AI, again, can give you best case scenarios, tell me what I'm not thinking about, tell me what I can do more or less of. But however, I think just really harnessing the power of people and making sure you have that connection with your team and you have transparency. I'm a big transparent leader. Let's talk about the uncomfortable things. Let's address the elephant in the room. And that's where we get real change. And I think perhaps getting all that and putting into AI and say, now I've done my work, I've done my survey, I've gathered this feedback, tell me what I'm missing. I think, again, not skipping that and going to AI first, I think would be my advice.
So many great examples, very practical examples that you shared with us today. I could keep going, but we like to wrap up with a lightning round. So a handful of quick hit questions. Just first thing that comes to mind, what is one HR task that you would happily hand to AI tomorrow, or even this afternoon if you want?
Job descriptions. Rewrite it, template it, brand it, make it consistent. Yes. All day.
Yes, it's like a dreaded task. Don't ask a hiring manager to draft a job description, and you won't see them back the next day with that job description, but you should with AI. So, what is one HR task that AI should never touch, ever?
I think feedback or any conversations that involve someone's livelihood and someone's ability to be employed or not be employed, I think it should be handled by a human. Difficult conversations as well.
Okay. What do you think a big myth is about AI making HR more human?
I think leaders make HR more human. I think people do. AI doesn't, but I think there's incredible use case scenarios of AI that we can use to be more effective and productive.
Yeah, I think it makes the humans be able to be more human, really. It's not making HR more human. So, what is the skill that every people leader needs to double down on in the AI era?
Emotional intelligence, I think, yeah, hands down.
Yep, great. So, finish this sentence. This is the last one. The risk isn't using AI, it's blank.
The risk is hiding behind AI and allowing it to dim our light and our voice.
I love where you ended us because I was taking some notes. I always try to wrap up with a couple of my thoughts on what you shared for guests or for viewers. I'm saying guests because we're talking about guests the whole session. So the first takeaway that I had, I said it back maybe a little bit differently than you said it, but you had so many great practical examples of where you've used AI to get to the human connection parts faster. And so maybe it took sort of someone working in hospitality, a very core sort of human experiential business, to teach us that lesson here on the show, which is use AI to get to the human connection pieces faster, right? So it's like that first pass, but then go over it, use your leadership expertise, use your human voice, etc. And then the second is I'm going back to Rose because I think you worked on that early. You've done something even improved since. Super excited to see where you go next. But with respect to communications, my takeaway there with what we talked about with Rose is remembering to embed your brand persona in your communications that you are producing using AI. And I think Rose is still an amazing example, however many years later, in like doing that. So everyone go to the Cosmopolitan.
Yes.
Talk to Rose and then do something similar with your own brand and your own voice. And the same would apply for leaders, right? So embed your own voice. And if you're going to use AI, teach the agents that you're using to really embed your voice in what you're communicating, or do it yourself after a first pass. I always leave guests with the last word here, so I'd love to do that today as well. So we've got lots of HR leaders listening today, I'm sure. So what would you say to the HR leader who just listened to us talk that you would want them to go and think about on their drive home?
I think so much is going on in the world in different facets, different parts of the world. There's a lot of noise, and I think especially in hospitality or any space where we interact with humans, I think they are the core and reason of what we do. And I think really keeping that human connection and authenticity and vulnerability in mind when we interact with people. In hospitality, we interact with so many people from different walks of life. And I think with any automation, AI, anything, it's really hard to become really robotic. And I think to just really make sure that we are able to pause throughout the day with great use of AI and all these tools and all the noise and everything happening in the world, and really think about how valuable people are, what they bring to the table, and how, especially in HR, we can serve those individuals and really bring out their best selves to work every day and just really, again, empower them and allow them to make a difference.
What a perfect piece of advice to land on and end on. I've so enjoyed speaking to you today. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a great conversation.
Thank you for joining us on The Human Element, presented by Whisk. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow The Human Element wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Barb Biden. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.